Hey guys, Thomas Goldcamp here with 24/7 Sports and Swamp247.com. Seems like every day we've got more Florida basketball news. We got more. On Wednesday, Florida landed its third transfer from the NCAA transfer portal on the way into the program. Obviously, the Gators have had a lot of attrition from last season's roster. Mike White looking to kind of replenish the roster. And I have to say, he's done a really good job doing so far. Mike White's always been regarded as a very good recruiter. And that's showing up in the transfer portal. Dan Mullen's obviously done it on the football side. Now Mike White getting it done on the basketball side. So on Wednesday, Florida added guard Myreon Jones from Penn State. He's a 6'3" guy, led the Nittany Lions in scoring last season with 15.3 points per game. He's an excellent three-point shooter, shot about 39% at Penn State. So another guy who will really be able to stretch the floor for the Gators, can fill up the stat sheet. Also a very solid free throw shooter, has a good knack for getting to the line, getting things done. So you look at some of the players that Florida has added via the transfer portal. They've now gotten two guys that were the leading scorer for their team a year ago, along with UMKC's Brandon McKissick, who scored 17.2 points per game. But unlike McKissick, Myreon Jones is not a guy that's coming from a smaller level and will have to adapt to kind of, the better quality of play at the SEC. Myreon Jones is a guy who played in the Big Ten, and that's a very, very competitive conference. So to be coming in as a leading scorer from Penn State, obviously he offers a lot of experience. I think he compares very similarly to Noah Locke when you set up their kind of profile side by side. Maybe not quite as good a shooter as Locke, but a guy, again, that shoots 39% from three-point range. Very, very quality shooter, can really fill it up. Florida now has landed the top scorers from two teams from last season. They've also landed the best shot blocker from Boston College in forward C.J. Felder. And I think what you're seeing is Mike White is going for both a blend of raw talent, guys like Tyree Appleby, from Cleveland State a couple of years back was their leading scorer. I think that's a guy you kind of get in Brandon McKissick, who you're not exactly sure how it'll translate, but obviously a guy with a lot of raw skill. And then combining that with some of these guys from high major conferences like CJ Felder from Boston College, like Myreon Jones from Penn State. And as you continue to do that, you get a nice balance of, potential guys that are looking to maybe be a little bit more patient in elevating themselves to the bigger stage versus guys who are looking for an opportunity, maybe in a new system at a new school. But I think Florida, one thing that's clear that Mike White has really targeted in the transfer portal is a lot of length. You look at both of the guards that Florida's added, they're both 6'3" guys. Kawasi Reeves, Florida's 2021 signee, coming in is 6'6". CJ Felder, a guy that's really, really a good rim protector, blocked 2.2 shots per game, and is a 6'7", 6'8" kind of guy. So Florida's really adding a lot of length. When you look at the roster right now, as things stand, Florida has five guards. Those guards are 6'1", 6'3", 6'3", 6'5", and 6'6". So that's pretty good length in the backcourt. And then you've got three forwards who are all kind of in that 6'7", 6'8" range. And a couple of those guys can really shoot it from three-point range, And so that, I think, is you're starting to see the mold of what maybe Mike White is looking for in his next team. A team that can really run, a lot of rim protectors, a lot of guys that can really jump and get out in transition, like CJ Felder, like Anthony DeRuggi. And then you've got, obviously, the two big centers potentially coming back. Colin Castleton, we're not for sure that he's coming back yet, but you would have two 6'11" guys in Jason Jutobo and Colin Castleton. So a lot of length for Florida, a lot of potential on this roster. I think, with all the concern about all the players leaving, when you look at the roster so far in terms of the departures, I really do think Myreon Jones is a guy that's very similar to Noah Locke. Maybe can do a little bit more in terms of creating his own shot, maybe than Noah Locke could. CJ Felder, I think, is a plus addition for a guy like Omar Payne. I think he's really an upgrade in the sense that that he's going to be a little bit more consistent. Again, he's coming from a high major program where he has produced more regularly than, say, a guy like Omar Payne does. Brandon McKissick, I think, you talk about who does he replace? You've got three guards, either Scotty Lewis, Trey Mann, or Quez Glover. And, I don't know that Florida really has a replacement for Mann just yet, but I think you'd have to say McKissick is probably going to be an upgrade from either a Scotty Lewis, who I thought didn't really develop in his first 2 years, or Quez Glover, who probably just didn't have, the real talent to keep up in the SEC. So far, three transfer additions for Florida, three very positive additions. I think the Gators are doing a good job of trying to really replace the talent that was lost with even better talent or more proven talent. And, obviously being able to get that talent to mesh is going to be a different story, but I do think you're seeing a more cohesive narrative. And this is the thing I've really harped on. you want to see Mike White recruit to an identity. And I think with the transfers that Florida has taken so far, Myreon Jones being the latest on Wednesday, you're starting to see that identity develop. I do think Florida, in its final, 2, 3, 4 additions to the roster, I think there's a couple things that I'd like to see them target. First and foremost, I think you need another ball handler. Tyree Appleby was a little bit loose with the ball last year. We saw that the offense was a lot better when they had somewhat of a more reliable guy in Trey Mann, a guy that could really distribute and kind of facilitate. I'm not sure that Florida has that facilitator on the roster right now. Tyree Appleby, to me, is a little bit more scorer than maybe that assist-focused kind of point guard. So I'd really like to see Florida go out and land another point guard, if for no other reason than depth. Even if Tyree Appleby ends up starting, I want to see more depth from that point guard spot, because a lot of the guards that Florida has brought in, not necessarily known as guys that are distributors. They're much more shooter oriented and certainly very good shooters. And I think the idea for Florida is very much to run up the pace of the offense, stretch the floor with a bunch of 3-point shooters, even your forwards being 3-point shooters. Let's talk real quickly before we wrap up this rapid reaction video. Other targets for Florida that may make decisions in the coming days. I think the first and foremost for everybody is Noah Gurley. He's a 6'8" forward from Furman. Was their second leading scorer. He can extend out to the 3-point line. So another guy in that, that forward mix that can kind of play that stretch 4 role. He's a guy that averaged 15.4 points per game, 5.8 rebounds per game, and is also capable of blocking some shots, averaged more than a block per game. He's a guy that a lot of big-time programs are after. He's got 8 finalists that he announced last weekend. He plans to make a decision this weekend, and I know that Florida feels pretty good about its chances with him. He was on a Zoom call with Mike White on Monday, and it sounded like that went pretty well. I think Florida is a high priority for him, but we'll see where he makes his decision. Again, another guy that would really help Florida stretch the floor. And then the second guy that Florida we know for sure is in contact with is forward Micah Peavy from Texas Tech. He's a 6'7" guy, a former top 50 prospect. He was a freshman for the Red Raiders this season, played in all 29 of their games, got a lot of run. Maybe not quite as productive as I think he probably wanted to be. He averaged 5.7 points per game and 3.1 rebounds per game. But one of the reasons I like Peavy a lot is that he is a freshman. He's got a lot of time in front of him. And if, the NCAA passes this free transfer rule, he's another guy that I think may not necessarily be a starter, but would absolutely be a key rotational piece. And then I think he's the type of guy that allows you to build some consistency moving forward. And I think if you're Mike White trying to rebalance your roster and then also build for the future, you don't want to take just graduate transfers this year and load up the roster on that, because then you turn around the following year and you've got to do the same thing again, really rebuild through the portal. I'd like to see a mix of the grad transfer types and guys that have multiple years of eligibility, and forward Micah Peavy from Texas Tech, a former top 50 prospect, certainly fits that bill. But you got to hand it to Mike White. We thought he would do pretty well in the transfer portal. So far, he's doing exactly that. Myreon Jones, the latest addition from Penn State, their leading scorer. He joins the Gators, and Florida is not done in the transfer portal. Mike White will almost certainly land another high-profile transfer or two in the coming days. But that'll do it for this version of the Rapid Reaction. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you liked the video, be sure to hit like, and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more Florida Gators content from Swamp 24/7. Thanks, guys.